Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies, recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Emilio.
I'm Madeline.
And I'm Julian. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we would love to hear from you. And you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok for updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio we record at Sleepless Cinematic Pod.
In addition to these main episodes, we also record and release one-off bonus episodes as we see fit. While we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, foregoing sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we start our current cycle of movies featuring Oscar winners in the Best Supporting Acting categories from years past, with one of our own categories as an episode type we call View-nanimous, where we revisit a movie that the three of us have all seen before and see if our initial opinions still stand, if they've changed, or if discussing the movie will make us see things we didn't see before.
And as musicians, we knew we had to return to an already classic film about musicians and about music more broadly. We are talking Whiplash, the 2014 film directed by Damien Chazelle, which really put him on the map.
Big time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Along with its lead actor, Miles Teller, and its second highest billed supporting actor and Oscar winner for the year that this came out, J.K. Simmons.
Yeah. And to discuss this movie, we have with us a fourth member here to round off this quartet of sorts. He is a drummer based here in New York City that is well-versed in pretty much every style, musical genre, and situation where music is a thing. You can catch him around town doing club dates, private events, collegiate level masterclasses, street busking, playing in Broadway pits, and even on TV where he's subbed in for the 8G band when they were still holding it down on Late Night with Seth Meyers. He's even published a book called Drumming in a Band, Stuff You Can Use, a great resource for drummers for hire everywhere, whether you're a seasoned pro or a novice looking to break into a scene. We've played together in a few different setups over the years, most notably doing R&B soul covers and originals with an outfit that some college buddies and I started called Chris Ames and the Favorite States. I can say from personal experience that he grooves with the very best of them. Now, the closest we've talked about movies before today was when, and I don't know if you remember this, Baz Luhrmann listened to us play a set at a Brooklyn rooftop winery.
Wow.
And when we went through his filmography, just for some context. So I think you are going to see a new side of me tonight, and I'll no doubt be seeing a new side of yours as well. And most of all, it's just great to see you again, man. It's been way too long. Rob Mitzner, welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast.
Thank you so much for
Welcome.
having me. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, man.
Really
absolutely.
nice introduction. And it's really nice to see you again, too. And I'm looking forward to talking about this very interesting movie.
Yeah.
Very interesting movie.
Yeah, dude. It's so good to have you, and I'm excited for us to get into this.
Totally.
Now, before we get too deep into this film, we're discussing Whiplash. There's a couple other similar titles that we do not want to confuse it with. And one of those is a film called Whip It,
Which this would come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2009 sports comedy starring a young Elliot Page. I actually didn't know this before looking at the Wikipedia now. Directed by Drew Barrymore.
Yeah,
Yes.
I learned this recently.
Yep. Yeah. Her directorial debut, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah, I have not seen this movie. Has anyone else here seen that?
I've seen part of it, I think, on TV, and it was cute. It's got a good cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have not seen it, but I've heard mostly positive things. This film is also not to be confused with Lash of the Whip, which is a film from 1924. This is a silent Western film directed by Francis Ford, not Coppola, about a ferry captain trying to keep a railroad exec from surveying a route with a whip-wielding hero repeatedly coming to their aid.
Oh, my goodness.
I've not seen this movie, but I'm so fascinated by this premise that I might go try to hunt it down.
That I can get into. That
Yeah.
sounds like a good
Possibly-
one. Yeah, that sounds like a fun one.
Yeah.
Sound, maybe like a deep cut inspiration for Indiana Jones.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Supposedly it's in the Library of Congress, so,
Ah,
I
so-
think it is accessible in that way.
And also of some merit.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't just put anything in there.
Exactly.
Yeah. This film is also not to be confused with the movie, I'd be surprised if you guys know this one, called Whipped, which is a film from 2000 starring a bunch of painfully immature guys who all fall in love with Amanda Peet. I saw this movie like on a dare back in the video store days. It looked really bad. I rewatched some clips of it in preparation to just speak even slightly about this film now. And I have to say, I legitimately feel horrible for most people who are involved in this, particularly Amanda Peet. Like, I think the filmmakers thought that they were making There's Something About Mary meets Swingers. Like, I think that was the pitch. And it is excruciatingly bad. So please, Whiplash is not to be confused with Whipped.
Yes, and those are titles that all sound noticeably similar to Whiplash. But there's also some movies that have different titles, but you still might confuse it with, such as Drumline, the coming-of-age teen comedy from 2002
Nick Cannon,
starring
baby.
Nick Cannon. Yeah. I also have not seen this movie.
I saw this one in theaters
Ooh.
back in the day.
Very cool.
What did you think of it?
I remember liking it when it came out. Yeah.
Much like with you and Whip It, I've only seen like parts of this on TV. I feel like it was a common like MTV.
It's fun. It's cool.
That's like a marching band movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And although this other film dramatizes the incident that a character in Whiplash recounts and seems to have made his educative North Star, we are not to confuse Whiplash with the film Bird, which was a film from 1988. It was directed by Clint Eastwood, and it stars Forrest Whitaker as the titular Charlie Parker, also known as Bird.
There's a movie that just came out like a few weeks ago that's also called Bird, directed by Andrea Arnold of Fish Tank fame.
So Bird, not to be confused with the more recent Bird.
Yeah. And that Bird is not about Charlie Parker. But yeah, no, we're not talking about any of those. We are talking, once again, about Whiplash.
The full-length feature, not the short.
Yes, not the short that premiered at Sundance a year before the full-length feature. But so, the film Whiplash, this is something that we've all seen before, and to quickly... most of us.
The three of us have seen before.
Yes.
Yeah, our guest, Rob, this is your first time seeing this movie. We'll ask you, I guess, for your opinion on it shortly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I just saw it for the first time 2 days ago. And, people have been asking me for many years, oh, what do you think of Whiplash? Because it's a drum movie and I'm a drummer and it's about drum education. And I never saw it. I don't know if I purposely avoided it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand maybe why.
After seeing it, spoiler alert on my own views, I wish that I had not seen it because I didn't think it was great, honestly.
Okay.
I'm actually really excited because normally the three of us tend to skew together
We have
on a lot of
similar
our
tastes.
opinions.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm actually really excited.
I've been polling a lot of people over the last few
Me too.
weeks, like as I've been around our school with, asking coworkers who are all musicians what they think of it. Like Julian and I went to a friend's gig last week and I asked their drummer, like, what do you think of Whiplash? He was like, I haven't seen it. I imagine that's, as you said, a common question for drummers around the world in the last decade. So I apologize for adding to that.
Yeah, I don't know if the drummers love it. We'll see. We'll get into it.
But before we get into all of our individual standings on the movie, I'll give a little plot summary just to set the stage. So, in Whiplash, 19-year-old jazz drummer Andrew Neiman is an undergraduate student at the fictional Schaefer Conservatory of Music in New York City. Already a proficient player, he aspires to play in the school's studio band conducted by Professor Terence Fletcher, an intimidating, to say the least, presence, who Andrew still looks up to against his better judgment. After getting a chance to prove himself, Andrew joins studio band, and in his very first rehearsal, is immediately subjected to Fletcher's verbally and physically abusive style of teaching, and humiliated in front of an aware yet non-responsive group of classmates. Nonetheless, Andrew's idea of a resolution is to follow Fletcher's instruction to practice harder and continue trying to prove himself against seemingly insurmountable odds. As Andrew navigates a casual romantic relationship, a tense family gathering, and a series of school competitions, his persistent desire to succeed as a drummer overrides everything else, including the sincere concerns of his compassionate father Jim and the injuries of a life-threatening car accident. When all other scenery is stripped away, the core of the story lies in the symbiotic relationship between Neiman and Fletcher, the former eager to impress and the latter eager to bring out by unrelenting means, the so-called Charlie Parker of the next generation.
Yeah, I think it was really well put.
Thank you. Yeah.
You already teased this a little bit, Rob, but can you expand a little bit on maybe why you say you kind of wish you hadn't seen it?
Well, first of all, some movies hit really close to home. This is a movie. It's okay. So like every time I see Spinal Tap and those guys get lost in the kitchen,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, this just happened to me last week. I was carrying all my stuff and we got off on the wrong floor and there we are. This is the same kind of thing. It's very close to home because as somebody who does music for a living and who's worked on learning to be a drummer since I was 12, to see jazz learning and to see somebody, at the beginning of their journey kind of squashed down in the way that he is, in the way that he sort of uses very harsh motivational tactics to sort of try to make him practice more and get better, it made me uncomfortable. And, I think a lot of things about this movie are not totally jiving with the way that I know the jazz experience and the musical learning experience to be, not just drum specific, it's kind of, there are things here that they certainly took some liberties, I would say.
Oh,
yeah.
100%.
I think that Damien Chazelle would agree. He's been very upfront about the fact that he was not really trying to make a movie that was realistic.
Yeah.
It was an exaggerated experience from his own time in high school. He was a jazz drummer there. And
that's allowed,
absolutely.
That's cool. It just, it makes it a little weird for someone like me seeing the thing and being like, oh man. I was thinking about this on the way here, like when a pilot sees a movie about airplanes, is he sitting there being like, oh man, like they didn't deploy the Johnson rod when we were learning. This movie sucks, And so I felt like I was having that kind of experience, like maybe the lack of reality in the story was clouding my impression.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're not alone, though. I feel like a lot of musicians, like this movie hits a real nerve.
Yeah. Like I said, I was kind of polling people over the last few weeks. I talked to a good amount of people who said like, they like it with some reservations. But I talked to a couple of people who I think lied to me because they would start with like, I like it. I think it's good. And then I kind of asked follow-up questions and you can tell like they started to be more honest about their quibbles with this film. And I'm like, it's okay for you to not like this movie.
Yeah.
That is fine.
I'll give you the quibbles right off the bat.
That's great. No, that's good.
Yeah. Well, this movie, I think that it's a really interesting to experience as both a musician and a film lover.
Yeah.
Because, I think this is a really excellent movie with pretty much no reservations personally. But I acknowledge that I do have some removal from someone in a position like you would be, Rob, where, you can think about the experience as a drummer and maybe the exaggerations of the film don't ring true to your own experience. I was listening to / watching the DVD commentary, which is given by director Damien Chazelle and star J.K. Simmons, and Damien Chazelle was saying during a pivotal sequence in the movie that he was aiming for more emotional realism than actual realism with the movie. And that comment stemmed from just, assessing a scene where they didn't have enough extras, so they used a lot of smoke to cloud the fact that there weren't many. But
that was something that Dougie noticed. My partner, we call Dougie on this podcast, and he actually does a lot of background acting, and he kept being like, why aren't there any background actors in this? It feels so empty.
Well,
it's a budget issue.
Yeah, this movie was very scrappily made, which I think we'll probably get into pretty soon.
But the finished product is just so tight.
Yeah, it's very tight.
Yeah, I think that watching this movie, I first saw this movie around 10 years ago when it came out in theaters. And I thought then and still think now that Damien Chazelle and company absolutely succeed at creating something that's emotionally real as an experience. I think I always got the sense that it was never, a totally realistic movie, but that didn't ruin it for me. Just to give a little bit of context for the time that I saw it. So 10 years ago, I was a senior in high school. So I was watching this movie first semester, senior year, which is right in the thick of applying for colleges. Mm-hmm. I was not planning to go to a conservatory like you see in the film. I was applying predominantly, actually, honestly, entirely to small liberal arts colleges, mostly in the Northeast, including the one that I went to, Sarah Lawrence. And well, one thing that watching this movie confirmed to me is, yes, I want to study music, but I don't want that.
Yeah.
I do not want what you see in the movie.
Right.
But it still hit me hard at the time, not necessarily for strictly its portrayal of music education, which of course that's what it's all about. But there were some things just about like the intensity of my general high school experience that really made this movie resonate for me, which I'll get into in more detail a little later on.
Since you were talking about college applications, I had a very quick question for all of you, all of us, musicians. Did you consider colleges based on the professors that were at the schools you were applying to?
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of did.
I did not.
I did not either.
Yeah.
But it seems like in the film Andrew is at Schaefer largely because of Fletcher.
Right.
And I feel like that is common in the world of music. It's not something that I personally experienced, but I was curious about you guys.
Yeah. No, I haven't. I didn't personally, but I had a lot of friends who went where I went to college and were very excited to be in Lenny Pickett's ensemble or Jean-Michel Pilk's ensemble. Yeah, definitely.
And Rob, you said yes.
I went and met the band director before I committed to the school, you know, and he helped. I think, I don't know this for a fact, but I think he actually helped me get in. So
cool.
Yeah. Where did you go to college?
I went to Brown.
Oh, wow. Nice. Yeah. And I, like when I was scoping out schools, like when I was at the point where I was comparing the schools I had been accepted to, like I admittedly had an inside track to Sarah Lawrence because an older cousin of mine went there. And so that cousin connected me with an alum who had studied music and just gave me a little bio about all the music teachers. And so that was how I knew what program I was getting into.
I'll give my first impression of the movie too. I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it pretty soon after it came out in theaters, maybe about a month or two into its run on streaming. I had some real strong feelings about it right away. My first general thought was like super engaging movie. And it felt like a very effective thriller in an unusual environment. I remember that was like my big takeaway. I was like, we're going to try to make this kind of psychological study, but put it in this arena that you would not normally expect it to be in. And I think for the casual viewer, that's kind of, I don't want to say the extent of what's fun and memorable about this movie, but I think you can look at it at that level and still enjoy it. I mean, it looks great. It sounds great. We're probably going to get into this, but whether you like his characterization or not, I think J.K. Simmons is incredible. I mean, he's very effective, memorable in this movie.
The acting's top notch.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And you got young Miles Teller right before his career blows up. But the other thing that hit me right away was something that I hear all the time when people talk about writing, which is the more specific you get, the more universal the themes can also get.
Yeah.
And I did not know that this was a very autobiographical film for writer-director Damien Chazelle on my first watch, but I mean, of course it is. It's like, I can't imagine someone without a lot of personal experience with music and with drums and even a competitive studio band type of structure in their life, being able to write something like this as effectively as he did, even though there are exaggerations, even though there are a lot of embellishments. And I do think the other thing that this movie captures really well is the pressure that one feels as a young musician who wants to be great. And I think it's really well captured on screen in this movie. And I think that actually is something that's very relatable and transferable about this movie across a bunch of different disciplines, like not just artistic ones. And the other thing I remember is I thought this ending of this movie was just bonkers good.
Oh, yeah.
Like knocked me out.
It's a very interesting ending.
Yeah, which we're going to get to.
One of the great film endings of the 21st century, in my opinion. Okay. But Madeline, how about your first impression?
So I've only seen this in the last few years for the first time. Julian has this brain where he can essentially tell you the exact date that he's seen any movie ever. And my brain does not work that way at all. I'm like, I don't know. I've seen this in the last 4 years for the first time. It could have been, I don't know, 10 months ago, could have been 4 years ago. I have no idea. But I've seen this fairly recently. I was a senior in college when this came out. And I think that a lot of people, like, being a music student, there were a lot of people just sort of like, it's not good. Like Emilio, we recently released our Home Alone episode and you talked about how your mom didn't want you to watch Home Alone and she would just like tell you that it wasn't good.
Yeah. And hope that would convince me enough to not be curious enough to watch it.
That kind of is a similar experience to me with Whiplash, where just a lot of musicians I knew were like, oh no, it's not very good. It's not very accurate. Like, it's not worth your time.
It's not worth your time, yeah.
I don't know that made like a super strong impression on me in the long term. I wasn't avoiding this movie, but I think that's probably why I didn't see it around the time it came out. And then I just kind of never got to it. I did see La La Land in the theaters. And I know, Emilio, you haven't seen La La Land.
I've not seen the whole thing. I've seen parts of it now.
And Julian, you've seen it and you don't like it.
No, I don't dislike that movie. I'm honestly in the middle about it. I think that there are some quibbles I have with it. I in all honesty, in all fairness to it, I think it is a little bit of a maligned movie because of its timing and what happened with the Oscars the year it came out.
Yeah.
I don't think it's perfect, but I don't think it's awful either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you land anywhere strongly on La La Land, Rob?
Never seen it.
Okay. I think that was the first Chazelle that I saw, probably.
Yeah.
And then I liked La La Land. I don't think it's a great film, but I think I like it slightly more than you do, Julian.
It's a fun movie. I'll give it that.
It's a fun movie. I think it has good music.
It's the first movie he wanted to make.
Yeah.
He went out to LA hoping that was the first movie he would make, not Whiplash.
It still kind of blows my mind that Whiplash in the arc of his career was supposed to be the stepping stone to La La Land.
Because they are so different.
They're so different.
Yeah.
But I personally think so Damien Chazelle has only released 5 feature films to this point in time. I've seen them all. I think Whiplash is his best film to date. You know, he's made a lot of great ones. He can make other great ones too. But Whiplash,
he's still young. He has a lot of time.
Yes, he is. That is true about him.
But yeah, I was just saying that I've seen La La Land and I enjoyed it, and I've seen Babylon, and that's also a movie that's extremely different from any of his others. It's a big swing.
Yeah.
It's Dougie's favorite of all the Chazelles, even having rewatched Whiplash.
Yeah.
And so I think I had seen La La Land, I had seen Babylon. I'm like, I should probably go ahead and get to Whiplash.
There's also First Man, which is this Neil Armstrong movie, which I think not a lot of people have seen.
Yeah,
I don't think that movie did
I have
great.
not. I'll probably get to it.
I thought it was good. I saw it when it was in theaters. And yeah, Babylon, a lot of critics were harsh on it, but we talked about this in a different conversation once. I think it's a good movie. I know you do too.
I enjoy that movie.
Yeah.
But it's a trip. It's an experience.
After seeing the movie again, do we feel about the same that we did after seeing it the first time? Is there anything we want to kind of add to that?
I would say that in terms of my appraisal of its quality, I certainly agree with my stance after earlier viewings of it. I definitely see even more of what makes it great now. The editing in that final sequence is, oh my God, it's just some of the best film editing I think that there is.
Award-winning editing.
Yeah. Yep. Oscar winning. But I think one thing that struck me about rewatching it for this conversation was that, so this is a movie, I think the first time you see it, it is going to hit you hard. There are some scenes that are going to feel like such a gut punch to watch. And I think that rewatching it, I was a little surprised at how even keel I felt going through it. Because I know some of these scenes are just, some of the most vicious verbal and physical abuse set to film that many people have seen, and I just felt strangely, I don't want to say calm, but I felt like
you were prepared for what you were going to see.
I was prepared, yeah. And so it's you can't experience it for the first time after that's already happened. But it just struck me how this movie lives on as a viewer after that gut punch of the first time.
Yeah, I like the way that you said that. I do think that my opinion of the quality hasn't changed. I think this is a very well made movie that I do enjoy, and I stick with that after the second viewing. But I do think that different themes hit me this time. Obviously, J.K. Simmons' performance is so big and already so revered that the first time it's kind of a gut punch in a lot of ways, whether good or bad. But I think that this time I focused a lot more on Andrew and a lot more on his issues that I think, are not only attributed to his experience with Fletcher, which I think we can maybe talk more about later.
Yeah. I was totally thinking about that too this time.
Yeah.
And also trying to dig a little deeper into Fletcher and just what's making him do what he does, which I imagine we'll also get into. But yeah, a little more character insight on this viewing.
It's been almost 10 years since I first saw the movie. And the big thing that happened in my life since then is that I had a kid.
Yeah.
Seeing it now as the dad of a young boy, I see so much more about the dad-son dynamics in the movie between Andrew and his father, and how that triangle of characters is like quietly an extremely important part of understanding this movie. Knowing what I was going to expect, I think, from some of the more bombastic parts of this film, that was the big thing that really struck me, is that there is an undercurrent to this movie that I don't think gets talked about, but that is really, it's very moving, I found. Very moving.
Yeah, that dad character played by Paul Reiser. I mean, I think I was on like the New York Public Library's website or something like that. I read some blurb about the movie in the last week that called him a failed artist, and I strongly disagree with that statement, because it's like, maybe he's not the most conventionally successful person, but I think he's a totally like he has a ton of integrity.
Yeah, we also don't have that many details about his career or professional success. Really, this is almost a narrative that Fletcher has made up just to mess with Andrew.
Yeah,
like,
right.
We don't actually know that he isn't a published author.
Yeah, we know, all we really know is that he is a high school teacher.
Yeah, and that he's also a writer.
Yeah,
that's
the
true.
lack of backstory for him was puzzling me the whole time I was
interesting.
watching the movie, because I was like, all right, I'm trying to get a little context for the things that he's saying, because some of them make a little sense and some of them don't. So I found myself wondering, what's this guy's deal? And then he goes and sees him in the club, and he's playing this like gentle, nice stuff, and you're like, all right, so he's like, is he a real cat? Is he playing?
Yeah,
like, what's he doing? Or is he just, and then he says he's leading a pro band, at the festival or whatever at the end, but he made it seem like he was not happy about that.
Yeah.
It seemed like
he
a
would
bit
rather
of a
be doing the conservatory band, and I know for a lot of musicians, like, the pro thing is what they would prefer, as opposed to the teaching. And it seemed like Fletcher was more into, doing his routine at the conservatory there.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So I was kind of wondering, like, who's this guy? What's his deal? I still didn't get a lot of information by the end of the film.
Yeah, and I think part of that feels intentional. He's a little bit of a blank canvas for a viewer to imprint a lot of their own stuff on. There was a whole sequence of this film that was shot following Fletcher on his apartment.
Yeah.
Partially, I think, to kind of create some backstory. And it was removed from the film, I think, particularly to make him a little bit more enigmatic.
Yeah, and I think also the note was that this is really a film from Andrew's perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I've always actually liked how enigmatic, I would say, all of the major characters can be, because, I mean, it's a real what you see is what you get kind of movie, in that you get some exposition about who they are and what's set them up to where they are now, but you don't get that much. There's no flashbacks. You really just kind of see all the characters in the present action of the movie. Yeah. And it just adds to J.K. Simmons' character, Terence Fletcher, as an antagonist that, like, you don't know what's motivating him to do this. And so, like, you get maybe a little peek at his vulnerable side in the movie, but you don't know his weakness. And, there's almost this illusion of him being kind of indestructible as a villain.
Yeah. I mean, really the only thing we see where there's a little bit of, like, you see through the crack some is when he finds out that a former student of his has died, and he originally tells the ensemble that the student has died in a car crash. We later find out that is not actually the case. But before we know what's happened, we just know he's, like, gotten an upsetting phone call, and he gets kind of emotional and lets his students see that. But I so don't trust him at any point in this movie. So many times he is manipulating people, like, in a kind of fake kind of way. Like, early on he's asking Andrew, like, about his family, and he gets some pretty personal information and then uses it against him. So perhaps this was a raw, vulnerable moment where he did have this terrible news that he felt the need to share with his top ensemble. But also, I don't know. I don't put it past this guy to use this as a manipulation in some way. I mean, he did lie to them.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the draws to having you here Rob, is you have a background in music that I think is a little bit distinct from our own. And I think your lived experience as a professional musician, also by choice, I think is a little distinct from our own as well. I'm wondering, and you alluded to this a little bit before, but I'm wondering if your background, having gone to school to study jazz, in any way kind of affected your enjoyment of this film as entertainment, not necessarily as something that is trying to kind of be realistic, but just as like a movie, as something that you turn on and you're like, I had a good time, or, oh, that was interesting.
Well, when I was watching the movie and thinking about my own experience learning to play jazz and what jazz is and what music is and how it works, in the film, they were very strongly portraying the process of learning how to play drums and how to do this as kind of like a sport. And that the idea was that we were going to go faster.
Yeah.
And that faster was the way to be the best.
Yeah.
And I think we all know from playing an instrument or doing anything, faster is not always better.
Yeah.
So, take Miles Davis, for example, not the most fast technical player, but widely regarded as maybe the finest jazz musician who ever lived.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I watch this movie and I see him rotating the drummers through the three, and they're all, and he says, no, so quickly, and they're just trying to get him to play faster. I'm sitting there thinking, why are we doing this? I don't see, at least from my perspective, how we're pursuing any kind of art here. They took this movie for me fails because it takes the art out of music and it makes it science and or sport. And, as far as enjoying it for entertainment, I mean, wonderful acting, some of the best, Miles Teller, he's playing a lot in there. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the drummer who recorded all of the tracks is Bernie Dressel, who was the drummer for Brian Setzer and is a well-regarded session drummer who's been on a million things. And he did a great job because there were times when I was watching, I was like, is that the guy or is that Miles playing? Because the opening scene, I think, when he comes in the practice room is Miles Teller playing.
Yeah.
The
And
sound design
quite
too.
well,
Yeah.
actually. Let's give him credit here. Like he worked that up. I don't know how old he was when he filmed this, but he did a nice job playing.
I think he was like in his early 20s. And I think he had some experience as a drummer, but he was mostly a rock drummer.
Yeah.
I don't think he had any experience with jazz.
Yeah,
I think they put him through kind of a boot camp.
Yeah, like 3 weeks before shooting began.
But I like what you were talking about with how they put so much focus on speed, because other than the initial kind of practice session we see, I feel like every other practice session, not the rehearsals, but like when it's just Andrew practicing alone, it's just like how fast can I play is pretty much the only thing we ever see him practice. Like he's not good at practicing. And practicing is a skill in itself.
No, I would totally agree with you. I have to imagine that was something of a creative decision to be like, we have to narrow this down to something quantifiable. Like, can you play this really fast? I would agree. I mean, some of my favorite musicians are not people that are chopsy, fast players, And so to distill it down to just that and then try to package it or pass it off as an elevated version of jazz, I think would be disingenuous. It's interesting though, because watching the movie, I don't really feel that. I feel like the moment that starts happening, you really start to feel like something is deeply wrong with the scenario that this character is in. And I don't know if that's just me and my own musical experience, like coming into play, or if that's something that the average person would look at and be like, that doesn't feel like the right way to teach.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And we really don't see him interact with the rest of the ensemble that much.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
which
They
is
don't.
odd.
They don't even talk to each other. I mean, that's the thing. Like part of being, what's in my book that I wrote about drums is, playing in a band with other people is the most rewarding thing you can do musically. And this film basically goes cuts completely against that premise.
Yeah, there's like really no collaboration until maybe the ending when Andrew kind of takes over and tries to lead this piece. But any of the rehearsals we see with the studio band, they don't talk to each other. They don't acknowledge each other. They're constantly fighting. He's, causing this. Fletcher is really perpetuating this, I think.
Yeah. I remember, reading Peter Erskine comment a little bit on this, and he was like, one of the unfortunate things about this movie is it takes the joy out of music.
Yeah.
That you don't see the fact that music can elicit so much joy. And that also that this is a very specific type of jazz, that jazz, as it's understood more popularly, is really a more improvisatory genre of music. And you really don't get any of that in this.
Well, yeah, because he's reading the notes on the page and they're acting like the notes on the page are the only thing.
Yeah.
And, anyone who knows about jazz knows that being able to improvise and come up with your own interpretation of what's on the page is what makes a great jazz musician. And so they've like distilled it down to a classical
approach.
Yeah, definitely. Do you guys notice he marks his charts in pen?
I did notice
that. Pretty rough.
I was like, oh, don't do that.
Yeah.
And it's like the kind of detail that cinematically, it's meant to show you is that he's writing on his page. But that's, as musicians, we can grade the accuracy of that.
Oh, dude, no.
Yeah.
You better have whiteout ready, man.
I think a lot of the inaccuracies could have been corrected without compromising the overall vision of the film.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that they didn't get a consultant in there, whoever was in charge of that sort of thing, just to be like, hey, let's use a pencil instead. That's what people would be using. Maybe only we as musicians would notice that, but
probably
here we are.
Noticing.
Right.
Well, Damien Chazelle drew from a high school experience in writing this movie. And so it's, part of what that makes me wonder is the limitations of high school. Are they transposed onto a college setting?
Yeah, I felt the same.
Yeah. And I think, that for me, that doesn't mean that it doesn't work cinematically, but in grading the accuracy, that's an interesting detail to consider. But also, like Damien Chazelle, if you listen to interviews with him or the DVD commentary, he talks a lot about how in making this movie that he had to take what is a pretty niche world and make it something that average viewers could get invested in. And a lot of that, independently of musical accuracy, a lot of that had to do with having relatable actors with expressive faces, which the movie certainly has. But that's an interesting thing to consider too, that this is like a world you don't often see in a movie that became as popular as this one did. And so then I think that, there's a lot of things about watching this movie where as a viewer, tracing the action of it, I don't question it. If you compare it to real world accuracy, then maybe it falls apart. But maybe in that regard, it's no different from watching an action movie where there are stunts and things like that couldn't possibly occur in real life as smoothly as they do in the movie. And also how situations are adapted there to meet or to fit parameters that in real life would not be possible. Even, something canonical like Die Hard.
Yeah. You know what just came to mind? Sideways and Merlot. How the character in Sideways was like, I'm not drinking any fucking Merlot, and it actually hurt Merlot sales for years because that movie was such a cultural phenomenon. And I'm wondering if this movie created sort of an adverse response to people who would want to study music.
Julian is applying for colleges at this point.
Right.
And I think I don't think you made any decisions based on this film.
No.
But you did say how it kind of, solidified your opinion of, I don't want that. And I am probably more likely to get that at a conservatory.
Right.
I'll say this too. One of the things I thought a lot about was the fact that Fletcher's big issue is that he's an educator doing this.
Yeah.
If he was just a guy out in the world and this was just his opinion, man, and this was how he saw music to be, then he would not be as menacing because people would have to make conscious choices to be like, I'm going to align myself with this guy. But the thing that makes him truly awful, I think, is that he has this type of influence over impressionable people.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if we've encountered people that even remotely scratch the surface of this guy's level of toxicity.
I don't think so. I've had teachers that are difficult, and I've had experiences where they kick your ass a little bit.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've had teachers that don't say nice things, but I'm wondering, related, what year was this supposed to have taken place?
Interesting question, because the movie is relative to the time that it was released a little bit anachronistic.
Yeah.
Because it's like you see, it seems like the iPhone hasn't been invented yet. In the time that this movie's taking place, like the most sophisticated phone is like some different kind of smartphone, and then you see that Andrew is doing all his studying with CDs, in a CD player. The read that I got on it was it seemed kind of like a ambiguously mid 2000s.
The reason I asked this is because he slaps him in the face a couple times in that first scene, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay. Now, if it were 1945, maybe this would be fine, and nobody, But I don't see how that flies, right?
No.
Even in the 90s, at that point, I was like, well, this is just, made up nonsense. Again, sorry to keep using that word.
No, you can.
No, that's okay.
It's fiction. So
yeah,
that's where I was wondering. If anyone knew when.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I definitely don't think this took place in 1945.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that what you're seeing is in the time that it's meant to be happening, deeply troubling and against any norm that a teacher might.
Yeah, because there was the era where you would get slapped with the ruler or whatever. Maybe that was the 50s. When did they let you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Would there ever have been a time where Fletcher's approaches would have been deemed okay?
I don't know if deemed okay is the word, but it would have been not confronted.
Right.
Yeah.
And people in this movie don't confront him. I mean, he does it in a room full of other students that are just silent.
Yeah.
And miserable looking, to be honest.
Yeah, totally.
They nobody looks like they want to be there.
They're terrified.
So, yeah.
I also was wondering, there's a moment where he kind of picks on the trombone players.
Yeah.
But really, it's like just
well, that makes perfect
drummers.
sense.
Yeah, I know, right.
Yeah.
But I find it just really interesting that he was so fixated on drummers.
Yeah, it's like the first time I watched this film, until you see him play, I kind of assumed it was because he was a drummer.
Yeah.
And we don't know necessarily that he's not, but we only ever see him play piano.
Yeah.
So I assume he's a pianist.
I think that's just another part of the fiction of the film. The film was about drums, and so he's fixated on the drummer. If the film was about trombone players, then, we would have heard more about the tuning of the trombone players.
That's true.
Yeah, and Damien Chazelle himself was a drummer, but I think that, having a drummer as the main character also makes it a movie that is easier for a non-musician to relate to, because drums are such a visceral instrument, and that they are more, I think, Rob, you made a comparison earlier to sports, and that it's they're the most athletic instrument, arguably.
Yeah, you could call the drummer like the point guard in some respects.
Sure.
Yeah. There you go.
Maybe.
I don't think I much like Rob, I had, professors that could get a little mean, but not to the point of, cursing profusely and throwing things at us. Like when I try to think of anyone even remotely kind of approaching this level of toxicity, I had a choir director in college who I felt like could get pretty emotionally angry in a way that eventually did cause him to be kind of pushed out. And I remember us having a morning rehearsal where he gives us sheet music for a piece for a concert that we had that day and told us to have it learned and memorized by that evening. And it was things like that and in you guys better go to a fucking practice room and learn this and have it memorized by 6 hours from now.
I'm hijacking your day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the closest I ever really got to anything like this.
Yeah. And I mean, in terms of among musicians, no one comes really to my mind as someone As someone who resembles Terence Fletcher, I mean, I know that they're out there, but
Well, the Buddy Rich tapes, man. Have you ever heard
Huh.
that?
There you go. I was
that's-
gonna say.
You know, there's a lot of that sort of thing.
I found it kind of funny that because Buddy Rich is name dropped in this movie, he's mentioned as one of the greats that
when he listens to his stuff,
exactly,
too.
yeah, and he idolizes him. He's, as you said, the Buddy Rich tapes. He's famously known as being a guy who could just fly off the handle, that demanded perfection from people in his band.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, the Buddy Rich tapes are Buddy Rich. It's a recording of him screaming and yelling at his band on the bus after the gig, telling them how terrible and worthless they are.
Yeah,
And it's rough, but it's also kind of humorous now, maybe all these years later.
right. That was the first time I heard the expression "clam" used.
Clam, yeah.
Yeah.
what exactly does that mean?
It's just like you made a mistake.
Oh.
It's like you guys clamming all over the stage and stuff. So
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he again super abusive.
Yeah.
So,
But Emilio, you posed the question: have you known someone like Terence Fletcher?
nobody close to that. What I will say is I had a music theory professor in college that I remember. He seemed really pained. He was
Yeah.
like a really pained person. He refused to tell anybody that they were correct. And it was like a weird thing.
We're
It was
not
like-
here to learn.
No, he was like allergic to affirming anybody. He would ask a question and somebody gave the correct answer. He would rephrase it himself and be like, that's the correct answer. It was so weird. And I just remember kind of almost feeling bad for him.
Yeah.
And yeah, I barely passed that class. I think he realized that I didn't really like him. I was also a little bit of an older student at the time, and I think there was something with that going on. So
Interesting. The other thought that I had was when I used to teach middle school chorus, and when I first started, I had a huge group of 8th graders who I had like 60 kids in my class, and I'm 22. So I'm like, I don't know how to control these kids. And they had this really revered, great choir director who they had left because he went up to the high school. And they were like, well, Mr. Smith could keep us under control because he would throw chairs. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to throw things at you. But and this would have been like 2015, maybe.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if perhaps he was inspired some in this
my
movie.
God.
I never saw him do it. So maybe it was a comedic thing. I don't know, because he was always a very nice guy. Yeah. I always had trouble picturing him actually doing this in a group of 13-year-olds. But, possibly.
It's unsettling to think that this movie, like someone watches Terence Fletcher and feels enabled by that.
it's funny. J.K. Simmons apparently had a friend who was a conductor. Because J.K. Simmons has a background in music. He graduated with a BA in music from the University of Montana. His dad was a musician as well too, and he says for a long time he was like he thought that was going to be his career, and he sort of came into acting via musicals.
Yeah.
He came from music and then went into theater and then eventually film acting and whatnot.
Do we know his primary instrument?
I know that he didn't play piano and had to learn for the movie for that one scene.
That's true. Yeah. He said he was like, that was the most intimidating day of shooting because he was like, all the other guys were just these like ace studio dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had to be there and play his 16 bars.
I don't know if he like had a primary or has a primary instrument per se. I know that he's a trained vocalist. I listened to his interview on WTF with Mark Maron, as I am wont to do. And he mentioned that when he was younger, he was like he had a stint as kind of a James Taylor wannabe guitar player. So I assume that he's a multi-instrumentalist, probably still, but I don't know if there's like one primary for him.
So J.K. Simmons said that he had a friend who was a conductor, and he said that this guy actually came to him and he was like, yes, finally, somebody understands what's going on here. And he was like kind of disturbed by that. And I think he mentioned this guy's name. It was in an interview that he did for the 10-year anniversary re-release of it for Collider. I don't remember this guy's name, but he's a very successful working conductor who was like, this guy's got it figured out, which I do think is kind of interesting about this movie. I think we can all agree that Fletcher is an extraordinarily misguided person.
Yeah.
I would say, too, that the incident that he keeps drawing from, the Joe Jones throwing a cymbal at Charlie Parker because he wasn't good enough, that is also kind of misremembered on his end. Because apparently that was not nearly how he describes it. It wasn't a violent throw of a cymbal, it was like, I don't know, you're shaking your head, Rob.
No, I don't know. I didn't know that story until I saw the movie.
Yeah, it's depicted in the Clint Eastwood film Bird. I think a little bit more true to life.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
not
that,
a nearly took his head off kind of throw as is described in Whiplash.
Yeah. That it was more like, I'm making this gong sound to be like, dude, what
Yeah,
you're
with
playing
it.
is not landing, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't nearly this violent attack as you say, Madeline. So for me, it's like he is clearly fixated on this incident
Yeah.
as this sort of way of saying, oh, being a hard ass is a way to pull genius and pull greatness out of people. I think it is kind of lived on in some respects because people like Fletcher who have that type of opinion about things, I don't think it's like something that you completely shun somebody for trying to like want people to be great. And I think that is why his character ultimately, by the end of the movie, there's a tiny part of you that's like wondering if there's anything going on with this guy.
Yeah.
If there's any reason that people like him existing is actually okay or not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like a football coach or something, you
Right,
know?
yeah.
Like there's some of them that are the best friend of the players and some of them that are the taskmaster like that. And there's different ways to motivate, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
If it's football and sports, maybe something like that and those kind of tactics are good. But it, obviously in music we see here that it doesn't have quite that same effect. But I don't know.
And when I was applying to colleges when I saw this movie, and then a year later when I was a freshman at Sarah Lawrence, and I think I probably brought up the movie Whiplash to not all but many of the music teachers who I had there, and they all were unanimously like, oh, the guy in that movie, he was terrible. Not as in like J.K. Simmons did a bad job. No, he did a great job. But like, oh God, what an awful professor. That was the consensus of my very, kind of open-minded cadre of liberal arts teachers in Bronxville, New York. But what, we're talking a lot about like how, we reflect on the movie as musicians, which is I think is a very rich avenue of conversation. But part of when I first saw Whiplash, part of what really made the movie hit me as hard as it did was that I felt like there was a more general reflection about education in it too. And we've started to get into this already in this conversation, but I felt like I saw some aspects of my educational experience that had nothing to do even with music, reflected in the movie, which was a little mind blowing just because I, was already many years steeped in music by the time it came out. And so, I mean, some of you have kind of answered this already, but I'll just formalize it into a question now. Have any of you ever had a teacher in any subject, any level of school, whose teaching style resembled that of Terence Fletcher?
I mean, maybe a little bit. I think that there's not, at least from my perspective, when I look back at all of the learning that I've done over the years and the students that I teach now,
Mhm.
I don't think it's bad to get your butt kicked a little bit. And I don't think that coddling a student or not pushing them hard enough is going to make them get better either. So I see Fletcher and I'm like, all right, this is too far. This is too much. But, if I didn't have teachers who pushed me and really, made me uncomfortable a lot,
Yeah.
I would not be where I'm at now. And
Yeah.
I think there's great validity in not the methods, but the intent. I think there's something to be said for that.
I agree with what you're saying, but as I think of it, I note that many of the teachers who have given me the best pushes as a student, whether in music or other subjects, are people who knew how to do that considerately.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. People who can give you like true critical feedback without being a jerk about it. Yeah.
Well, you could be a jerk, but without being abusive and inappropriate.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And know where the line is.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a
Exactly.
balance.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like when I was in college, I made associations with people that I think were kind of living under the impression that this type of approach to music was actually good.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that means that they had people like Fletcher in their lives, but I remember like somebody actively vibing me incredibly hard because I was like, he was like, I don't think you know how to swing. That's what he told me. Like the light went out in his eyes when he realized that I didn't meet a standard that he held for other people. And so I remember just seeing that and being like, oh man, like he saw, music in this extremely narrow-minded way. And so I don't think I encountered professors like that, but I felt like I encountered younger people that actually maybe were kind of more like Andrew's.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, Madeline, did you have a teacher?
No,
like
I feel like I kind of have already spoken to
Yeah.
this as much as I need to.
Yeah. Well, I posed the question because, in all honesty, I did have a teacher who was kind of like Terence Fletcher in some unsettlingly similar ways. But it was not a music teacher. It was my 9th grade history teacher. In some past episodes when we talked about high school movies, I talked about high school being a very intense time for me.
Yeah.
And in freshman year, I really felt like I was put through the ringer. I was assigned, across a bunch of classes, some really, truly, and I'm not being hyperbolic, obscene amounts of homework. But I think that the greatest contributor to that immense workload was my 9th grade history teacher. This guy, there are some things about Terence Fletcher that he did pretty directly. He would make examples of students who he thought were not living up to his standards. He would berate them in front of the class. I never witnessed him get physical with anyone, but I do remember one time when he cold called on a student who was not ready to answer the question, and when he was dissatisfied with that student's non-answer, he punched a table, and the whole class like gasped at him. And he was he realized he had fucked up and like was trying to kind of nervously make jokes the rest of that class. And one thing with him that, because I was his student for a whole year, that I could see that you don't really see with Terence Fletcher was that I could see that this guy, I don't know what it was, but there must have been some kind of gap in his life.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was like the black sheep of the family or something, but he like clearly was striving for something that he didn't have. I noticed, one other thing you don't see with Terence Fletcher that this teacher of mine did have was that he had a noticeable vice, but it was a weird one. It was not like smoking or something like that. He was an avid soda drinker.
Interesting.
So he was always very...
What was his soda of choice?
I think it was Pepsi.
Okay.
He was very sugared up, and you could tell throughout class. And so then when he would expect quick answers to complicated questions that you can't get a quick answer to. And, he had a little bit, he was drinking soda all the time, and maybe it was just this, but he had a little bit of the vibe of a guy with like a cocaine problem.
But with Pepsi.
Yeah. I had a 5th grade teacher who was hooked on Tab. Yeah, absolutely was just chaining it. Was just pop, 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 pop,
Wow.
like just at her desk. So she was not mean or anything.
What was strange about him though, and where part of why I liken him to Terence Fletcher was that he had a oddly good reputation at the high school that I went to. That there was a little bit of this aura of like, oh, you survived his class. It's like, that makes you resilient, or it's like, it's cool that you're in his class, because it's like, there's almost an eliteness you get for surviving it. But like, in hindsight, I see that like, that's not something to enjoy.
Yeah.
And then like one experience, so like, in Whiplash, one of the most unsettling sequences of the movie is when you see Andrew Neiman is, his bus breaks down when he's on the way to a competition and he runs late. He, he gets a rental car to the building where it's happening, but he realizes he forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also kind of unrealistic because you have to be like 25 to rent a car.
Exactly.
Also
Sorry,
true.
kind of breaks down there.
But so, you see like he forgets his sticks. He has to go back and get them at the rental car place. Then is, rushing back and gets hit by a truck and somehow gets up and goes back to the competition, fruitlessly aims to play and is told by Terence Fletcher, you're done. And on a smaller scale, I remember having an experience as the student of this teacher that like honestly made that scene resonate with me. It sounds terrible, and it was nowhere near as actively bad as that scene in Whiplash was. But what happened was, so this is, this just shows you some of the absurdity of the homework that I was given in ninth grade that we had a series of assignments where we had to draw maps because it was a history class and we were drawing all these maps of different parts of the world to represent different patterns of trade, whatever. I've thrown most of, not all of those away because they're just bad memories for me. But there was one particularly grueling assignment we had to do where I just like toiled over it for one night. It was the first time I ever pulled an all-nighter. And then the next day I hand it in and I just see this teacher glance at it for a few seconds and slap a B grade on it. And all things considered, like B is, a pretty good grade, but I just felt like I grinded over this and that's all you have to do. And I really wanted to like scream fuck you at that teacher.
Yeah, I get that. I have to say, I feel like as you were talking, it kind of unlocked a memory that I had repressed. Perhaps like just because I'm a little further out of high school than you are. So these are just a little less fresh in my mind. My ninth grade geometry teacher told us first day of class, I have anger management issues. He threw a girl's jacket out a third-story window once, and he would only let you into his morning study hall if you brought him breakfast. So
wow, that's rough.
There are those things. I kind of forgot about him.
Yeah. But then to connect this experience that I had back to Whiplash, really part of the way that I knew I had been through an abusive experience with this teacher was that after it was all over and for literally years after I had taken that class, I somehow convinced myself that what I went through was worthwhile, that it had been like, well, that was grueling, but I learned a lot from it. And I think honestly, it was not until full circle, my senior year of high school, that I started to disabuse myself of that notion and realize, no, what I went through was fucked up. And I think that this movie was crucial in me coming to that realization. Yeah.
It's interesting too, because, one of the things I remember was like a huge lesson when I was in college was I was taking one class. I think it was Intro to Sociology, and I got an A, and I had a TA who I had a good relationship with. I worked really hard in that class. And then I took another class and I felt like I was like crushing this class. And I would just get really bad grades on like everything. And I was like, man, I'm like really working in this class. And I went to this TA because I'm like, I want to see how like I can turn these grades into better grades. And he's like, I don't think your writing is very good in that when you write, it doesn't tell me that you're comprehending anything. And I remember just finding it so interesting because I was like, I'm bringing the same approach to one class versus another. Like I got through that class. I think I got like a B or a B minus in it, which was a big deal for me then. But I remember just like realizing, I was like, that's life. That there are people that you're just going to connect with that are going to be like, I get you, man. Great. And then somebody else who you give that exact same effort to, and they're like, this is whatever.
Yeah.
That was a lesson that I felt like I was ready for in college. That is not always a lesson that you're like ready for in high school.
Yeah.
Moments like that, I think actually, when I look back on my college experience, almost feel more meaningful than like some other grades that I've gotten. The fact that I got a B minus in that class and I like worked really hard at it, and I was just like, I'm never going to get any better than this, I actually found was like really profound to me. Yeah, this is actually more like life than it isn't, but I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, everyone has to do hard work sooner or later. It's just that there's a way to, some people will put another person through a ringer with it, and other people will just kind of, gradually come to accept that, or just have experiences that allow that to dawn on them without them being subjected to it in a extreme way. But yeah, so we've talked about like specific experiences with teachers and realizations that have come from that. But also, I think, there were some aspects of Whiplash that made me reflect on just general aspects of education, not relating to teachers specifically, but just like the being put in a situation. Maybe this is a little less about like dealing with Terence Fletcher as a teacher, but more like the drive that Andrew Neiman has as a student. That there, I remember some experiences also predominantly from high school that were similar to the movie, in that they, in having to do with like putting up with an extreme amount of work, and to the point that in order to complete it, you're basically interfering with your own well-being to do it. And so, I mean, that's one reflection that I have, but like, what do you guys think about like Whiplash in that regard? Do you think that it shed some light on any greater truth about like whether it's higher education or something it's it's in college or below. Like, what do you all think about that?
We talked a little bit earlier when I was introducing you, Rob, that you wrote a book, one that I've had the privilege to take in, and I love this book. I think the vibe of it, and I think what you're kind of trying to get at in it, I think is something that is so useful. But would love for you to like dig into this a little bit, because we are talking a little bit about education and the education of music, and this is kind of like your stamp on that.
Yeah, I mean, the book is about how to play in a band with other people. It's about how to interact with other musicians and be versatile and do lots of different things and to collaborate and all these kind of things. And in a lot of ways, Whiplash is the antithesis of that. Because I think they focus a lot in the movie on his solo practice, and I think that if it were more realistic, not that it should have been, it's a movie, but if it were, I think they would have been, maybe showing the band working together. And I think one of the scenes that I got kind of annoyed when I saw was like, there's at the end, the bass player, he's on stage, right? And he's doing the thing, and he's clearly lost because Fletcher screwed him and gave him didn't tell him what it was. And the bass player looks over at him with this terrible annoyance, like, "What are you doing, man?" Like, and I was like, okay, well, why are you not helping him?
Right.
Like, you're not the abusive whatever. So, and this is supposed to be a pro band. So what I'm saying is like, yeah, there are always situations where everyone's not always nice to you in a musical situation. But like, my viewpoint on how music should work is, that collaboration. I know you guys agree, I'm sure.
Yeah,
big time.
With that. So
yeah, I totally agree. I do think that Andrew has terrible social skills.
I think that's an important element of
and
this,
has isolated himself a lot. Because I totally agree. Like, one of the best ways you get better as a musician is playing with other people. And we don't really see him do that outside of like the rehearsals for these ensembles. We really should see him jamming with people. I think he like doesn't know how to speak to other humans.
And Fletcher has created this culture where now it almost walling the musicians off from each other.
Yeah.
Therefore, keeping his own power over the situation. I think if the band were to be a band, he would have less opportunity to abuse them individually,
Sure.
Because he's dividing and conquering is what I see.
No, you're absolutely right. It's like, he's pitting all these players against one another.
Particularly the drummers.
Yeah, particularly the drummers,
Yeah.
Trombone players a bit too.
There's only room for one drummer.
That is true.
Yeah, and thinking of like Andrew's drive to succeed amidst all of this, I've said already that there was a lot that I like thought was resonant with my own high school experience, but I think I do kind of remember there at times being this sense of like, that everyone was a little bit like on their own in terms of like having to, in their drive to succeed, whether they had it or not, in my own high school experience. Not that it was totally cutthroat, like I bonded with friends over the obscene amounts of work, but there was kind of a sense that it's like, well, we're all in this shit show together and we can't help each other. So I guess the best we can do is just go through it.
Yeah. I mean, this thing was like Lord of the Flies,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought too that with like, when you look at Andrew's drive to succeed in the movie, I could, there were points where, you see he's up to obscene hours of the night, still practicing. And then there's like, his ability to follow through on his work is detrimental to personal relationships too. I mean, Madeline, you already said that he already lacks good social skills, but you get the sense that it hurts his relationship with his father. And we haven't talked about this yet, but he has a short-lived relationship with Nicole, who initially is the she works at the concession stand at a movie theater he goes to.
It's a good movie they're watching, by the way. Do you guys see Rififi?
I've not seen it, but I did look it up when I saw it on the marquee.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I've heard great things about it.
It has a very famous heist sequence.
Yeah, I've heard it's one of the great heist
it's
movies.
It's really cool.
But so it's, and then like personal relationships in Andrew's life suffer. And I can remember, with the grind of work that I had in high school that like I feel like that negatively affected my own social skills at certain points. But also something else that I feel like differs my experience from Andrew's is that at the stage in my life when I had that happen, that I remember at like times in like high school that my dad would sometimes say to me like, oh, you're working yourself so hard over this. Like, why don't you ease up? And my answer to that is that at that time, I didn't know how to exist any other way.
Yeah.
It was not a choice. It was just my mode of doing things, which eventually changed. And then in senior year, when I just had enough, I started to relieve myself by allowing grades to slip and had my office space phase.
Right.
But I feel like, you know,
damn, it feels good to be a gangster.
Yes. But like thinking of Andrew's drive, well, that's a whole separate aspect of the movie we've been starting to get at earlier.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you were saying you didn't understand how to live a different way. And
Right.
I think that is very much how Andrew is living. And you were talking a little bit about his relationship with Nicole, who he pulls back from because he says like he wants to be great.
Yeah. It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, he's going to be great, and all she's going to do is hold him back. He and Fletcher both have this obsession with the idea of greatness and achieving this long-lasting notoriety by any means necessary. We see Andrew at a dinner table with his family where he says he would, rather die at 34 and be remembered than live a long life and not be remembered, which is not something that everybody agrees with. It's kind of an insane thing to bring up at a dinner table. What do you think, Rob?
I think a lot of musicians have had that dinner before.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like it's a super relatable moment in this film.
Not me. I have a very supportive family, and my mom was, in fact, the one who suggested when I was 13 that I take up the drums. So,
yeah.
But I think him sitting there and getting grilled by the uncle or who was, I don't know.
Yeah,
an
uncle.
I think it's an uncle.
His cousin.
The uncle and then these two brothers.
Cousins.
And the brothers. Yeah, it's just like,
yeah.
I was watching that and I'm like, yeah, I know that.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to not really experience that myself either. Like my family was very supportive of me pursuing music. But the question from one of the cousins or whatever they are about like, oh, well, how do you judge a music competition? Like, isn't it subjective?
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely heard that. Like when I was conducting choirs that would go to competitions, like people who were not musicians just like didn't get it.
But that's not wrong though. It is subjective,
Yeah.
That was, I think, intended to be one thing in the movie, but then when I saw it, it felt like, okay, yeah, well, this person actually is saying something that makes sense.
Maybe an acknowledgement of there being this understanding that the way music and excellence in music is being depicted in the movie is maybe not the way that the world sees it or the way that we should actually see it ourselves.
Yeah, I mean that to me just makes the whole thing kind of break down. When I watch the movie, I'm like, okay, well, you just undermined your whole premise of why we're here,
right?
By having this brother who we're supposed to not like, kind of nail it,
right? Well, I think one of the things that you see in that scene too is that I don't know if there's a chicken or the egg on this, but like he's pretty combative.
Oh
I mean, that scene is maybe the funniest line in the movie. Just like, those are 4 words you'll never hear from the NFL.
Yeah.
I do love that line.
Yeah, totally.
But like, he's a prick.
Yeah.
And you also see it too when he gets some stature in Fletcher's band and he tells one of the other guys, he's like, you're here to turn my fucking pages or whatever.
Yeah.
He is ready to assume this very toxic personality too.
Yeah, which makes me think that Fletcher's methods are not the only thing that has pushed him to this point. Like, I think that this was simmering under the surface for Andrew for probably a myriad of reasons. This conversation at the dinner table, he's probably had this a lot before, which is probably part of why he's so combative, because he's so sick of having this argument and having to kind of justify.
Yeah, because he's like a doormat at the beginning, and then later, he's acting out a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the little bits of exposition that you get about Andrew's family backstory is that his mom left when he was very young, and that he's been raised mainly by his single father. And I mean, you kind of get the sense that, you know, his father is a much more relaxed, mellow person. And maybe that, you know, there's this implication that Andrew's fierce devotion to his art is like in some way kind of filling the void in his life. You know, I feel like that's not the deepest reading, but I think that's a little bit of what the movie's going for.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Nope.
And so that, I mean, you know, he clearly has this drive that, you know, it's not to say that his father isn't also devoted to his art, but it manifests differently in their behavior.
Yeah.
The first time I saw this movie, I was just really fascinated by the ending. I feel like the ending leaves you with so many questions, and I really don't know actually too many movies whose ending can be interpreted with such a range of opinion.
Yeah.
Depending on how you've taken in the film, I feel like Andrew's moment is either really triumphant or is like extremely troubling.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask everybody here just for a binary response. Is this a triumphant or unsettling ending? And you can choose to elaborate on this later, but I'm just kind of curious. If you had to distill it to just one of those two words, where do you guys find this ending for his character?
I think he comes out on top.
So triumphant.
I think he wins, yeah.
Interesting.
I think it's unsettling.
I think from an emotional read, I feel it's triumphant. But then if I like take a moment to think about it, any moment at all, then I'm like, there's something wrong here.
I think that the two characters, Andrew and Terence, both, they get what they want from each other. But I think that if you're looking at it as a third person observer, I think you can sort of see that they are the only people who are satisfied by what's going on here. On, you know, just kind of on a more literal level. I mean, so what's happening in this very famous finale is that, I mean, should we like summarize what goes on there?
I mean, I guess Fletcher asks him to be the drummer for this band in a festival, but
Carnegie Hall,
and doesn't equip him with the right charts, and does so because
he has a vendetta.
Against him. Yeah. And knows that he's the one whose personal account is the reason why he's no longer a professor at the conservatory. And so, yeah, I mean, he does that. And at first it really seems like Andrew is crushed for good in that moment. Yeah. But yeah, and then he turns around, gets back on stage, and kind of imposes his own will on the performance. I love this ending. I cannot get enough of it. I just think it's so rich because so many things come into focus at the end. It's very pointed that Andrew goes back, gets a hug from his dad, and then immediately sort of turns back around. And there's a scene a very specific moment where you see his dad, Jim, looking onto the stage, removed. Yeah. And like, what am I seeing here in response to what his son is doing? Mm-hmm. It kind of brought back the movie A Bronx Tale, how that movie is so much about a young guy who idolizes his dad up to a certain point. And then suddenly there's this other guy who comes into the picture, and what this guy represents might not actually be the best thing.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison.
Yeah, the dad is also, I think, represents a certain type of settling in life. Yeah. You know, which I think the movie seems to be pitting these two guys as examples of. Mm-hmm. Fletcher's the guy who's never settled, doesn't want to settle, is unaccepting of the notion that someone would choose to settle. And Andrew's dad is the one who's like, there's joy and incredible things out of life when you do take a path like this. Yeah. And so you see he's chosen the route to sort of confront that type of presence. And I love it because too, Rob, you were saying like he kind of is like triumphant. In some ways he really is. Like he even literally, as he's playing, he's just like, fuck you. And he says it like very directly to him. Fletcher is unable to do anything but let him do what he's doing.
Yeah, Andrew takes the power back.
Yeah, he does.
Moment.
Yeah. I mean, you were talking about the ending, but as you described this relationship with the father, I had to think of a scene in the beginning of the movie when you see Andrew and his father Jim go into the audience at this movie Rififi that they're watching, and then they have a little conversation as it's starting up where Andrew says, you know, this is very early on. He and Terence Fletcher have only met once at this point. And he says, I got to play in front of him today. He just says him, like he's already spoken to his dad about who Terence Fletcher is.
Yeah.
But then there's this exchange that really stuck with me this time, which is that, you get the sense that the father is already dubious about Terence Fletcher. And he just says something, it sounds a little hokey, but it's like, when you get to be my age, you have perspective. And then Andrew just says, I don't want perspective.
Right.
And I mean, it's kind of a key to the character right there.
Right.
Yeah.
When Neiman and Fletcher actually come face to face in the finale as they do. I mean, for one thing, it's just a really riveting scene to watch on the level of pure performance. It's just like the drum solo that Neiman takes, and the interplay between them is really fascinating. But when you get to those final notes, pun absolutely intended, that and you just see the way that it's shot, the back and forth between their two faces, their eyes specifically, and sometimes Fletcher's hands too. It really is almost like Fletcher is playing Andrew like a puppet, or in those last scenes, it's like he's conducting him and him alone. And I had the thought while watching this movie that as an audience member, just seeing the conductor and the drummer have this little one-on-one with each other, there probably were audience members that are like, fuck are these guys doing?
Like, what is happening?
Yeah. We never saw any audience really. We saw we saw a hall at the beginning. We saw what it looked like, but whenever they were performing in this movie, it never felt to me like they were performing. It felt the same as in the class.
Yeah, I think
because
that,
all we saw was the same shot. This is a cinematography thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I didn't relate to that as a performance. It didn't feel like a performance.
Yeah, I think that perhaps after Upswinging, the piece that Andrew doesn't have the chart for, I think you get a shot of the audience where there are people, but they're just so stone-faced and it's extremely awkward.
Yeah.
So even if there are human bodies supposedly there, it still, I think, gives you the sense of playing to an empty hall.
Right.
Yeah. And even if if the audience members can't all hear the dialogue that is exchanged between Fletcher and Neiman in that scene, I feel like they probably get the vibe. Just because
he leaves, he leaves and he comes back. And so they're probably like, what is going on?
And he cuts Fletcher off while he's speaking with his, by starting the song.
And
Right.
Fletcher is introducing, I think, a ballad, right?
Right.
He's like, we're going to slow it down. And then
Yeah, and he
Caravan, baby.
Yeah, he actually, J.K. Simmons said on the commentary that he was supposed to introduce Caravan specifically. So technically, Neiman does go with the program there.
Okay.
But he just plays it a lot faster. And I've always loved how at the very final moments of this movie, before the credits roll, that, you have that last coda that Neiman plays on the drums, and it just, it ends with the music. There's no applause. It doesn't cut to applause.
Yeah, I do like that.
There probably is an odd applause after it, but that to me just cements the detail that this finale, it's a consummation of the relationship between the two characters.
I have an idea. What about this, right? What if the last bit is a dream sequence because he just got hit with the car?
That
right?
is true.
He's in the road.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, okay, and you see him crawl out of the car. So maybe this is like
he's dying.
Him, maybe he's like
He's in a
the
coma.
street.
I don't remember where from, but I feel like I heard that as a fan theory years ago, probably sometime when I was in college. Because even like I took a few film classes when I was at Sarah Lawrence too, and this was among film lovers. This was a popular movie at that time.
That makes sense.
In fact, I even had a screenwriting class for one semester. Shout out to the great teacher Fred Stripe, who he actually showed. We took an entire class where we watched all of Whiplash and then talked about it afterward. This really was, and this was like maybe 2 years after the movie came out. This was a hot movie for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's maybe it's a little bit when you can suspend disbelief, maybe it's a little bit easier to enjoy the movie as a film lover than as a musician specifically.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
One of the things for me that I love about the way this movie is written and ultimately how it ends is it is so up to you and your own personal opinions about whether there's anything about Fletcher that is redeemable, whether there's anything about his perspective on life and music that has a place in the world, and also whether you feel like the road that Andrew is taking, is he bound to be the next Charlie Parker, dead at 34? you can take a read on it that the very end, and you mentioned this a little bit too, Julian, you get to see their faces and you don't really see Fletcher, but you can tell that he's smiling.
Yeah.
And that you see that Andrew's response to that is a smile himself. Whether he's forced Fletcher to have to deal with him in this moment, it's really only because he gets his approval that everything is okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's the read on this movie where you go like, oh no, this guy is bought into this perspective.
Yeah.
And you said too, it ends before there's anything else, before there's any applause. It is not a movie about musical appreciation.
Yeah.
As you've said, it is a movie about these guys.
But what if it's only one guy and Fletcher is just a figment of his imagination
Yeah.
driving him to
Yes.
become great as
Yeah.
a musician? Maybe this is all just Andrew being in the
His
practice
own
room too long
obsession.
and
Yeah.
Fletcher's just
Well, the movie does start with a scene where it's just the two of them.
yeah. So
And-
maybe Fletcher's not even
Maybe he's not even real.
Well, it's like watching Whiplash this time. I mean, one comparison that I thought of throughout to a movie that I had first seen since my prior viewing of Whiplash was to a movie that is not at all about music, and that is the Michael Mann movie Heat.
I love Heat.
Yeah,
Jesus, I love
great,
that movie.
great movie. But like both Heat and Whiplash are about these characters with like a symbiotic relationship. Like they're against each other and yet they need each other. They also both have that scene where the two opposed characters calmly sit down at a cafe together. So it's like, I mean, Whiplash was the first movie that I saw of that pair, but now like watching it, seeing Andrew and Terence Fletcher having that conversation after they've both been dismissed from Schaefer Conservatory, I'm like, oh, they're doing the Heat thing here. And not in a derivative way. I think it works totally well in Whiplash. But I feel like that's sort of the read I had on the relationship this time. It's that they are like two opposed forces that need each other, much in the same way that in movies like Heat, you see people on opposite sides of the law entangled with each other.
Yeah. I'm going to say it's kind of a fun aspect of this movie is that it takes the stakes of music so unrealistically seriously.
Yeah.
It's like it makes it like criminal police officer type of thing, which I think, I asked a little bit earlier if, this movie had some sort of adverse effect on people wanting to sort of, pursue music in some way.
how could it not? I mean, if you see this, and you're a kid and you're going in, like, it certainly couldn't encourage you, right?
Or you're more of an Andrew and you see the end of this movie and you say,
this is
no,
how
you
he
just have
became
to push
great.
through all of that shit
Maybe.
and get to and then you're going to be in nirvana.
Because Fletcher's defense is that, like, oh, well, the next Charlie Parker isn't going to be
Exactly.
discouraged by my methods.
It just makes it look like it's not fun.
Yeah.
Totally.
Music's
Absolutely.
supposed to be fun.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's interesting. I thought it was really interesting that Fletcher said that about like the next Charlie Parker wouldn't be discouraged, because I think that, like in a way, Fletcher is both justifying and undermining his own approach by that. Because
totally.
Yeah, the next Charlie Parker might not even need an instructor to get there.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. And I mean, if he's kind of trying to hold out for I can't think of the term for it, but he's just trying to hold out for the perfect student who he can mold. The protege.
Yeah.
Whereas he is going to discourage a bunch of other people that could have still been really good. And they may not have become the next Charlie Parker, but there are a lot of great musicians out there who aren't like unequivocally the best, but are still very good because they had good educators.
What do you mean by the best, though?
Exactly.
I mean, in this movie, it's the fastest.
That's very true. And
so, like,
that is part of his issue. Fletcher's issue, I think, is that he thinks there is only like one way to be the best.
Well, it's like when we had our conversation about the movie Fame, that there was this great quote that came up during that.
You literally took the words out of my mouth. Go for it.
About, there's dancer character in the movie who is being dressed down by her teacher and says something to the effect of, I don't want to be great, I just want to dance.
I just want to dance. That's literally, I put my hand out to say that.
Yeah. And it's, that's a character who is not an Andrew Neiman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think a character that you and I both, when we heard that, we were like, whoa.
Yeah, that's it.
Feel really seen. You're like, I just want to do the best job I can.
Yeah.
And hope that puts me somewhere.
Yeah. And I want to enjoy the art that I'm making.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like add that to the sentence, the best job I can.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any quick little things we want to go around with? We've kind of gone over a little bit, I think, but there a little detail or two that we want to share?
A few notes I want to mention. So one thing, like throughout this whole conversation, I've been calling him Andrew Neiman, which is intentional because in the movie, he first introduces himself as Andrew Neiman, and then Fletcher and a bunch of others take to calling him Neiman. And as someone who has a last name that I pronounce one way, but most of the world pronounces a different way, I'm really related to that.
Man, tell me about it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. But also, like another aspect, a visual aspect of the movie that I wanted to point out was actually the costuming of Terence Fletcher. And I think most of this was by J.K. Simmons' own volition, that he, in most scenes you see Terence Fletcher presented, he's wearing only black. And it's very tight clothing too. It almost, in like maybe like all the way from that first scene through many others, whenever he takes his jacket off, it almost looks like he's ready for a fight.
Yeah.
Because he's also ripped.
Yeah, he's swole. He's got some biceps, which
he really does. It's actually funny because he said that he got in shape for something before the movie, but then when he knew he was going to play this character, he like went extra hard. He wanted to give Fletcher like a more imposing physical presence.
Yeah.
The thing I find so funny is that I feel like that move and the success of this movie has kind of made J.K. Simmons the swole, like guy in his 60s role. Because now he's in this movie right now where he plays like an absolutely jacked Santa.
Red one.
But it reminds...
Really?
Yeah. It's hilarious. There's a whole scene where he's like benching.
Oh, you've watched it?
No, but I've seen this clip. It's part of the like lore
Is
of this
it called
movie.
Jacked Santa?
No, although that
Jacked Frost.
Jacked. Ooh, I like
Oh,
that.
that's great.
Look what you did.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard about Hot Frosty?
Oh,
No.
Yes, I've heard of this.
And this is like a Netflix style, I think, Hallmark movie right now. Like, what if Frosty came to life and he was really hot? And it's called Hot Frosty.
Yes,
Wow.
I've heard of this.
Wow.
I've actually heard it's quite enjoyable if you appreciate the conceit of bad Christmas movies.
Yeah.
No, but I just found that to be kind of funny that like
Totally.
he made this decision to appear some way physically, and obviously this role has given him a lot of clout, and he's like, I'm just gonna stay jacked. Yeah.
So also, I mean, one, like in terms of the visual presentation of the character, I mean, in the scenes when he's berating Andrew in that first rehearsal and his face is right up close to him, I was so taken by like how the lines in J.K. Simmons' face were accented there. And he almost, with that costume design and his shaved head, he almost looked like a genuine beast in those scenes. Like I felt like it looked like something out of the Alien movies.
Nice.
Yeah, like almost
Well
like the way
done.
that they shoot xenomorphs when they're closing in on prey. It's just like that's the way that he looked to me this time around. It hasn't, I mean, maybe we all kind of know it, but it hasn't come up yet saliently in this conversation that so I remember in our past conversation about I Saw the TV Glow, our guest for that episode, Lily Desmond, pointed out how a lot of the people who play the scariest villains in movies are much sweeter in real life. And from everything I've heard, J.K. Simmons is one of those people.
I've heard that, yeah.
Do you guys know about his Oscar acceptance speech?
Yes.
It's honestly like one of the most heartwarming things you will ever hear.
Yeah, about the importance of family.
The importance of family,
Aww.
yes. Yeah. He literally spends 3 seconds acknowledging the people who made this movie and just spends the rest of his time gushing about his wife and his kids and how important it is to have a relationship with your parents.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's really like the Andrew Neiman dad character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And yeah, it's funny that I feel like the first time I ever saw him on screen was in the Spider-Man movies playing J. Jonah Jameson. So, I mean, some people saw his role as Terence Fletcher as like a flip of, say, Juno's dad. But I was ready for him to be a loudmouth. I thought like, yeah, I can see J.K. Simmons doing that.
Well, it's not like he's like super warm and fuzzy in Juno either. Like
he's kind of gruff.
Yeah. Gruff's a good word for it. Like he's still a very loving father, but he is gruff.
Yeah.
He's not a
And now
teddy
he's
bear.
a State Farm guy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's the yellow M&M too. The voice
Is
of
he
the
really?
yellow M&M. Yeah, I remember when he hosted.
I mean,
Fun
good for him.
fact.
Good for him.
When he hosted SNL after Whiplash, I think that he mentioned that there.
Keep getting them checks, J.K. Simmons. You know,
Yeah.
We've discussed that this movie is quite autobiographical. Life definitely started to imitate art, though, because during the filming of this movie, Damien Chazelle got into a car accident.
Yeah.
It was
I heard that,
apparently
yeah.
pretty serious, and there were a lot of medical professionals who were discouraging him from going back to work. And in order for him to continue working, he had to be trailed by
Wow.
somebody to see if there were signs of concussion aftermath. But he soldiered on.
Yeah, because they film for what, like 19 days?
Yeah, some insanely short amount
They're
of
on
time.
a very short time schedule.
To make a movie like this in 19 days is like
It's insane.
unfathomable.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, it's astounding.
Yeah.
And it was edited in a crunch too.
Yeah.
I think they had like only 10 weeks to do it.
I know he made another one before, but this was kind of the first one where he was really kind of going in and being like, I think had something of a budget for himself on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's his breakthrough.
This is but he had like the whole movie storyboarded to
Yeah.
death. Had a crew of people that were like assassins and just came
Yeah.
in and just made this movie happen. So
Totally.
Yeah.
Julian, you mentioned the editing.
Mhm.
And we said, I think, earlier that this movie does win the Academy Award for Best Editing this
Yes.
year. And we've talked in previous conversations with movies about music how important editing is to the accuracy of the playing that you see.
this is very true.
They were very obsessive about this in Spinal Tap because all of that was played live, but they had to be really careful in the edit that actually came across that they're playing accurately.
Yeah.
And this movie has such fast cuts. I think it was a real challenge, I imagine, to be able to keep the playing looking accurate while also trying to abide by like the stylistic choices that
Yeah.
Chazelle wanted.
Yeah. I also love too how the fast cutting in this movie is partially to create mood, partially to move the story along.
Yeah.
But there's one little moment that I love where you see the other drummer have some sort of amorous moment with a girlfriend, and he like takes his hand and pulls her hair behind her ear
Mhm.
in a very like familiar way, and you see Andrew clock it, and that moment like jumped out of the movie for me.
Yeah.
And it happens so quickly, but it is so resonant, that kind of feeling of like, yeah, we're all here. Yeah, we're like pouring ourselves into music, but like, God, it would be so nice to have a girlfriend, you know?
Yeah.
It's so quick, but
Yeah.
it's very resonant and stays with you.
Yeah, this is a great movie when it comes to insert shots, whether it be that one of the ear or all of these various ones that happen in all the music performance scenes. Like
Yeah.
in that first rehearsal, there's a great insert of all the like different feet tapping in a row. I love that shot. It's so brief, but I love that shot.
Yeah. Rob, I'd ask you really quick, drumming accuracy. Was there anything that jumped out to you from a perspective? Like, was there a moment at all where you were like, wow, that was really nice? Or, oh, that's where things kind of came apart? I don't know.
Not one moment. I
Yeah.
would say, Miles Teller did a good job of making it look like it was supposed to look. And I think that the drummer who recorded it did a good job of making it sound that way. I mean, it for me, it's never going to be that accurate because
Right.
I'm watching it, all like drum videos are a thing I do a lot. So
Yeah.
getting the audio and the video lined up are I'm always watching for that sort of thing. And, it's obvious to me that it wasn't. But, I commend Miles Teller for doing a nice job.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, it's one of the great things about his acting role is just simply the playing of it all.
Why don't we transition
Sure.
to our unlikely shared universe?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I'm ready for that.
All right, cool.
Any volunteers to go first?
I can go first.
Go for it.
You mentioned a little bit about Connolly. I think he's the one with the girlfriend.
Right.
He's the redhead drummer.
He's like the jock. He really looks like a jock.
He definitely has kind of a Chad look. But I think he gets kind of the short end of the stick at Schaefer because he seems like a nice enough guy. Like he seems maybe a little oblivious socially. He definitely seems like way cooler than Andrew, like higher up on the social ladder. And then I think talks to Andrew in kind of a weird, almost patronizing way. But he still seems ultimately well-meaning, like a nice person. And he's kind of used as a tool by Fletcher just to intimidate Andrew. So I think it's totally possible that Connolly is like, no, thank you. I am out.
Don't they even say he's like, he went pre-med or something?
I think it was the other one
the
that
other one
switched to
pre-med.
pre-med.
So,
Yeah.
But
he didn't seem very good at the drums. He seemed kind of like he was just there.
he seemed not super passionate about being there. And I think to be at a conservatory and to make it all the way through, you need to have some passion at the very least.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
So I would like to create a potential backstory for Connolly and say that he actually comes from an incredibly wealthy background. And after this experience at Schaefer, he drops out and he decides to pursue business to the delight of his father so that he can later take over the family business. He soon meets a woman named Hunter and they settle down and prepare to start a family. However, shortly after Hunter becomes pregnant with their first child, she begins to feel isolated from Connolly and impulsively swallows a marble whole. Exhilarated.
That's not a good idea.
No, exhilarated by this experience, she begins to swallow other small objects for the continued thrill.
Okay.
I mean, listeners, you can't see Rob's face right now, but he was just making such a great grimace.
Will Connolly, or rather Richie is his real name, be able to help his wife overcome this weird affliction, or will she continue to swallow more and more dangerous items?
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is this?
I actually have no idea what this is.
This is a movie called Swallow.
Oh, okay. I've heard of this.
Yes.
With Haley Bennett, isn't
Yes.
it? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of music and lyrics.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
A movie that we also talked about.
Exactly.
Ooh, all right. Well, now it makes more sense.
She's the pop star.
Yeah.
So she just like swallows items. She has some sort of weird addiction to swallowing small items, and
That sounds like a crazy
that are like
fetish.
not
that there's, like, an online community
not
for.
digestible. And he plays her husband.
Oh my God. That sounds like a really tough scenario if you're the partner of somebody who does that.
And reminder, she's also pregnant in the movie at this point.
God, yes.
So
This is
when
like
she's swallowing like tax. And it's tough.
Okay,
it's
okay,
tough.
Okay.
I'll leave it there.
All right.
Sounds like some bona fide body horror there, right there.
Yeah. I would say so. It's a tough one. If you can stomach it, it's interesting.
No pun intended. Yeah.
That's true.
No, pun absolutely intended.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
It is interesting at the very least, but
Cool.
I wouldn't say like it's a chill, night at the movies.
It is a chilling movie.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I can go next.
Go
That's
for it.
cool. All right. So we talked a little bit about this family dinner that Andrew and his father attend. And Andrew, in that dinner, has a pretty contentious interaction with his uncle Frank. Well, what if there is some dark historical subtext to that interaction? And let's say that Frank's current appearance as a family man, I think he's supposed to live somewhere, seemed kind of like New Jersey by the, by the geography of this movie.
Yeah.
Maybe this is only a thing of the last 20 or so years leading up to the events of Whiplash. And it's the result of his efforts to clean up his act after years of criminal activity. When Frank was young, his difficult behavior resulted in a tumultuous relationship with his presumably East Coast-based family. And when he was of age, he split for the West Coast, eventually settling in a remote and seemingly idyllic town near the Canadian border, and assuming the not-so-subtle pseudonym Hank. Frank, Hank, not that subtle. As years went by, he became the go-to accomplice for any criminal activity in this town, small-time or big-time, ranging anywhere from petty theft to attempted murder. But after being busted in a standoff with the FBI and losing the affections of his beloved wife, Norma, as a result, Hank decides it's time to change his ways. He then returns east, reconnects with his core family, goes back to his given name, Frank, and finds a wife with whom he has 2 children, at last finding stability after decades of many valleys and peaks, maybe just 2 of the latter.
I didn't need to hear this because you came to me earlier and you were like, I've chosen this actor, and I thought maybe you'd do the same one. So I knew what you were going to do as soon as you told me the actor.
Yeah. Yes, this is the actor Chris Mulkey, who appeared as a character named Hank Jennings in, if you haven't gotten it already, Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'll close this off here. We come to learn that Andrew's dad, Jim, is an English teacher at Pennington High School. And Andrew introduces him to Fletcher as a writer, right? Like that's kind of how he considers him first and foremost. I do think it's possible that while Jim has settled into a life as a teacher, he had aspirations too once as not just a writer, but also potentially a stand-up comedian. Because you see, back in Baltimore, where Jim grew up, he used to love to hang out with his buddies at a local eatery, and they would talk all sorts of things. And Jim had a real penchant for being the comedic relief amongst the group. He always seemed to have the right comebacks and interesting observations about life. And while there, he had this kind of equal opportunity ribbing relationship with these guys. They gave him a nickname, by the way, Modell, which I think maybe had to do something with model cars. But I think that this is where he got the inspiration to direct his passions into writing. So I actually think that Jim has had a long-standing relationship with the idea of writing, particularly with comedy. And it starts all the way back when he was much younger. Do we know what movie this is?
I haven't seen it, but this is Diner.
This is Diner. Yes.
Yes.
It's a great movie. Has anybody here seen? No. Oh, it's great.
I haven't.
It's very fun. It's also one of those movies. It's kind of like an American Graffiti or like a Fast Times at Ridgemont High or a Dazed and Confused, where it's like all of the main actors in this movie all went on to have like really long careers, and this is one of the first films that they kind of all had, like they're The Outsiders or something. And Paul Reiser, who plays Jim in Whiplash, plays Modell, and he is really charming and very funny in this movie. Baltimore, late 50s.
Yeah, when
Good
you
times.
said like Baltimore and eatery, that was when I put it together.
Yes. I had to keep away from the word diner.
Yeah.
Because that's a Barry Levinson movie.
Yeah.
Who directed a movie we discussed, Wag the Dog.
Yeah.
And he is a Baltimorean.
Yeah. And there is a fun moment in that movie where one of the characters, played by Daniel Stern, absolutely freaks out because his wife does not know how to. His wife does not handle his record collection in a manner of his liking. And they have a moment where she's like, I don't know who Charlie Parker is. And he's like, Charlie Parker is just only the best jazz musician ever to live. And so I do think that there is a little connection, intertextual going on between Diner and Whiplash. But yes, Paul Reiser, he's quite good in that. I think he's quite good in this movie. Like I said, that was one of the big takeaways for me, is like his character and the kind of triangle that happens between him and Andrew and Fletcher. Really cool.
All right.
Rob, I take it that that unlikely shared universe is not something that don't worry. If you have something and you're sitting on it, I want to give you the opportunity to say it.
I think you guys covered it.
Okay. Wonderful. Are there any last things that we want to say about our experience with Whiplash?
I think I don't feel like my opinion of the movie has personally changed, although I do greatly value your insight, Rob, because I feel like that it's this movie, like I think any great movie will be seen from multiple different angles. Different viewers will not necessarily overlap in their opinions. And so I really do appreciate the opportunity to get a perspective that I think in many ways differed from mine with what you had to say about it. So thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just because I didn't personally care for it or think that it was accurate doesn't mean that there weren't a lot of brilliant things in it.
Yeah.
Again, I want to call out the acting. I thought the acting was great, and I was impressed by the chemistry the two main actors had with each other. And, the thing about Fletcher being imagined was something I thought about even while I was watching the movie, and because this is, it strains the imagination a bit to think that this person would be allowed to exist at a conservatory.
Right,
so,
of course.
Even in the 90s or whenever. So, I guess if you take it for what it is, which is fiction and fantasy, and you can enjoy it for that. So that's valuable.
Yeah.
Totally.
I totally feel that.
Yeah, I think more than ever before in this conversation, I've really considered like the differences of how how people experience music in real life versus how you portray it to make it cinematic.
Yeah.
And we had a whole cycle of, movies about musicians on film that that came up there too. But this movie in particular, I think really is really compels the viewer to consider that in a unique way.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, Chazelle is a divisive director. I think not First Man, but most of his other movies are, they're divisive. I think Whiplash, divisive among musicians. La La Land, divisive among everyone. Babylon, once again, divisive among everyone who has seen it and many who haven't.
Mm-hmm.
I think anybody that sees a Damien Chazelle movie, I feel like you kind of either love it or you hate it.
Interesting. I don't want to press you too hard on that, but do you have any quick thought as to maybe why?
I don't. I can't really figure it out because, as we said up top, his movies are all very distinct from each other.
Yeah.
Like this and La La Land both have some amount of jazz, but they're incredibly different films.
Yeah.
Stylistically, in the performances, even in the genre itself. Same thing with Babylon. So I think it's just a young director who has a lot of really interesting ideas and is trying to and loves film. Like Babylon is a movie about how much he loves film, and this is a movie not about love. This is not a movie about love.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah,
Well, I think what he would say is it's a movie about addiction.
Yeah.
Or the unhealthy relationship that you can have with something that is supposed to bring joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny enough. I think the other Damien Chazelle movie that I would say is most similar to Whiplash is probably First Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From what I know about the movie, that sounds like there are some overlapping themes there.
Yeah. And he said on the commentary that he's very interested in monomaniacal characters who really are headed in one direction and have only one thing on their mind, but that there's a lot of shading you can still give to them. In terms of performance. Just want to quickly shout out Damien Chazelle's first feature, Guy and Madeline, on a park bench, which is I've seen once. And I mean, you can tell that it's a first feature, but it's really great and charming in a lot of ways. I do not think that is a divisive movie.
Fair enough. I actually haven't seen that one. I should, just for my namesake.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
You raised your hand and I was like, wait a minute. Are you actually in that film?
No, that's me.
Yeah, it's you. I really enjoyed coming back to this movie. I know we just talked about how this is not his first feature, but it really has first time filmmaker energy all over it, which I am just a huge sucker for. I love when somebody you feel like somebody's going for broke. I love how taut it is. I've talked a little bit earlier about how I think this movie creates this kind of psychological warfare in an environment that does not seem like it would necessarily sustain it. And I think there's something kind of cool about that. And I say that full well knowing that people who pursue music, I think there's a real vulnerability to doing so. And I think that this movie, one of the reasons why it really hits people is because it really is, I think, picking at a type of vulnerability that you dive headlong into. And I think that when what is shown on screen feels almost disrespectful to the craft that people are devoting themselves to against a current in our capitalistic society, being in the arts is really, really hard. Yeah. It's a hard way to make a living. You have to love it. And so I think sometimes it's really easy for a movie like this to ruffle people's feathers who are in the arts, who are musicians. It reminded me also too of the fact that my own path to music and to where I'm at is kind of allowed me to a little bit of privilege to sort of look at this movie a little bit differently, I think, than some contemporaries that I know and some people that I know. And I think it's a really profound movie in a lot of ways, has a lot, I think, to say about the pursuit of greatness, what you give up of yourself when you pursue greatness, if it's even something that we should be doing in society. And I loved coming back to this. Not gonna lie. Yeah. Rob, you were like one of the most incredibly talented and professional and like just good dudes that I know, like out on the scene. You just are. Can you tell people where they can find your book, where they can maybe see you play, where they can get to follow you, I guess? Like where can people do that?
Well, the social media, of course, there's Rob Mitzner Drums on Instagram and Facebook and all that good stuff. The book is available through Hudson Music, which is a publisher that does a lot of drum books, actually. And it's, again, called Drumming in a Band, Stuff You Can Use, and it has all different styles of music. As far as where you can see me play, I play all around New York City. I have a couple of regular residencies that I do, playing jazz with different groups. And, hit up my website, robmitzner.com. I keep the schedule on there and see where I'm at. Come find me.
Awesome.
Cool.
So cool. Yeah, let's talk about what we're doing next.
All right. So as we continue talking about great Oscar-winning supporting performances in movies, we've talked about a movie we've all seen just now. Now we're going to move to a movie that none of us have seen just yet, but we will have, of course, for the conversation. And that movie, going, most of a decade before Whiplash, that movie is Dreamgirls.
Yeah. I feel like I've had like 5 opportunities to kind of, or maybe see this movie.
Yeah.
And I just haven't. And I'm somewhat familiar with the musical. And it is jam-packed with really incredible actors and performers. So I am really excited to talk about this movie.
Yeah. I'm excited to see this for the first time. I'm excited that we're continuing to talk about the acting performances, but I like that we're also staying on the angle of music as well.
Right.
I think it's kind of hard for us to avoid that. And
Yeah, exactly.
We really do like engaging that way.
It's natural. And we should say that the supporting performer that we are using to justify talking about Dreamgirls is Jennifer Hudson, who won Best Supporting Actress for her role in that movie.
Chicago represent.
Hey.
Just saying. Just
wonderful.
I'm
very excited. I am really eager to see what that movie holds.
Yeah, so check that out next week or in 2 weeks for the release. In addition to this podcast, you can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can contact us via email. We would love to hear from you. Write to us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. If you're on Letterboxd, you can follow me, Madeline, at Patroness of Cats.
And you can follow me, Julian, at Julian_Barthold. Simply my name with an underscore. If you are listening to us for the first time, thank you for finding us. If this is the second or third or 20th time you've listened to us, thank you for sticking with us. We have really grown to love doing this, and it means the world to have our budding listenership grow.
And if you haven't already, we'd ask you, return listener, to please write a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. This is one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and help our podcast take its next steps. You can also keep it grassroots. You can tell a friend to tell a friend about our podcast, the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. That helps too.
Well, I think if we had a drum in the room, this is where we would do a little.
There we go.
Oh,
there we go.
Fantastic.
Yeah.